Hi, welcome to Chapter 17 of Absoute Java, where we're going to talk about Swing. This is the first of 5 videos. We're going to start off with the video 1 on event-driven programming, very high-level point of view. We'll move on to video 2 to get some hands-on and actually create our first application that's going to display a window with one button. Assign an exercise so you can get used to creating your own button, your own event handlers. We'll follow this up with the video 3 on layout managers and panels, where we will learn how to have multiple things show up in a screen in an organized fashion. We'll have an exercise to help us gain experience with layout managers, followed by video 4 and 5, where we will talk about menu bars, menus, menu items, text boxes, text areas, and follow that up with an exercise. Now, we are going to be using a lot of Java libraries. There's no way that you can remember them all, so here I provided some nice references. The first reference is to the Java.doc library itself. Fantastic resource and one that you should take advantage of. You know, for example, if you want to use a J button, let's come down here to J button. It will describe a J button, and it's going to show us, some of the methods that a J button has. But as I go further down, look at all of the methods that J button inherits that you can call. There's no way you could remember all of these. Instead, just go out to Java.doc, look at the component you want, and typically you will find a method that already exists to do exactly what you want. To get an idea of the swing set and what type of components are available, I gave you the second link. Now if we go out there and take a look, you'll see that you have buttons, you have checkboxes, we have a combo box here, we got a scrollable list. We have a menu with menu items, and menu items separated with a separator, radio buttons, sliders, spinners, text fields, password fields, a color chooser, a file selection dialog, a J table, a text area which has rows and multiple columns, a J-tree component, labels with text and icons, or just icons, progress bars, etc. I recommend you go out there and take a look at the different type of components. And lastly is a nice tutorial itself on Swing. It will describe all the Swing components, describe how to lay them out, and also talks about writing event listeners. Very well done resource. So today we're going to look at Swing, and we're going to look at how to develop a graphical user interface, or GUIs. And a GUI is a windowing system that interacts with the user. With Java 1, there was an abstract windowing toolkit package. That was all that we needed to create a GUI. Now over time, the Swing package was released that replaced part of the abstract windowing toolkit. So we will be using AWT and Swing to develop GUIs. And Swing GUIs are designed using a form of object-oriented programming known as event-driven programming, and we will be talking a lot about that in this first video. 3 packages that we will be importing almost all the time in all of our GUI code are shown here. I'm showing the AWT event package, and I'm also showing JavaX, note the X here, for the Swing package. So event-driven programming is a programming style that uses a signal and response approach to programming. This is a lot different than we've done in the past. An event is an object that acts as a signal to another object that we're going to call a listener. And the sending of an event to this listener is called firing the event. The object that fires the event is often a GUI component, such as a button that we've just clicked on. There are many different types of events, and the Java library describes all of them. The one we're going to focus on in Chapter 17 primarily is an action event, and I'm showing the Java doc for the action event here. There are not many methods, but two key methods that you might want to take advantage of when your handler receives an action event is to ask the event for its getAction command. That will return to you the name that's on the button itself. So if it was an OK button, you probably get back the string OK. The other key method is getSource. Now, getSource is going to return the actual object reference on the GUI component that was clicked on. So if I clicked on a J button, I'm going to get back the reference to the J button. The reference will come back as an object, so I will have to cast that. Now, listeners, a listener object performs some action in response to the event. And a button, for example, may have any number of listeners. Maybe no one's listening, maybe one listener, two, but can have any number of listeners. And the listeners may respond to a different kind of event, or multiple listeners may respond to the same event. So when a button gets clicked, you might have 3 different listeners that were associated with the button all get called to react to that event. To give you a sense for all the listeners that are out there, I just clicked on the event listener parent to many of the children classes that are a particular type of listeners. And the most popular one that we will be using throughout Chapter 17 is the action listener. But there are others, like the item listener, that we would be using for a radio button or a J combo box. There are key listeners if we wanted to listen to key presses within a text field. There are list selection listeners if we want to see what list item was selected in a list box, etc. Now, event handlers. A listener object has methods that specify what will happen when events of various kinds are received by it. These methods are called event handlers, and they have each listener object will typically implement a listener interface, and each listener interface will define the exact signatures of the methods that we need to provide. The programmer using the listener object will define or redefine these event handler methods. For example, if we were to create a class to implement the action listener has one method that we have to provide to handle events when a button is clicked on. And that method is called action performed, and it receives an action event parameter. And that was just the action listener. Some listeners have more than one method that we need to provide. For example, a window listener will have 7 different methods whose bodies we need to provide. So event firing and an event listener. So let's say we have a GUI component such as a J button. When that gets clicked on, it's going to generate an event. In the case of a J button, it will generate an action event. And this action event will be sent to the action performed method on each action listener that has been registered to listen to the button click. Now, event-driven programming is very different from most programming we've seen up until now. So far, programs have consisted of a list of statements that we've executed in a particular order. Right? We invoked main, and then the program went off and started to run. In event-driven programming, objects are created that can fire events, and listener objects are created that can react to those events. But we don't know when any of these GUI components will be clicked on by the user. So the program itself no longer determines the order in which things can happen. In the event-driven programming, the next thing that happens depends entirely on what the next event is that's generated. In particular, methods are defined that will never be explicitly invoked in any program. So we are going to create these listener methods, such as action performed, but we will never directly call those. They will be called by a GUI component being clicked on and firing an event off and sent to that listener to handle it. So in video 2, we're going to actually go out. We are going to create our first event listener. We will create a button and we will hook the two up together. We will follow that by an exercise. Have a great day.